Welcome to Classics You Slept Through, the book podcast where we read and discuss classic books. I'm your host, Kyle Davis, along with a girl who has not gone 12 rounds with a welterweight, my sister, Mare. How's it going today, Mare?
It's going pretty good. I feel like 12 rounds would be a lot.
I would
I
agree.
do feel like having a toddler and a 7-year-old have gone enough rounds.
Thrown in the towel, you're done. All right, well, tonight we are talking about the second section of Men Without Women by Ernest Hemingway. If you were with us our last episode, you know this is a short story collection of stories Hemingway wrote over the years and published in various publications and collected into a single published work of short stories. First episode, we went through the first 4 stories, and this one, we're going to be going through another 4. And I think we should just get right into it. Since none of them have anything to do with any other, we don't have to recap the last section at all. They were good
Yeah,
stories.
that's the beauty of a short story collection. So,
All right.
your story is up
Right
first.
into it. Right. So we started out with one called Que te dice la patria, which is a story that's also broken in, has 2 or 3 total subsections. So the first section is just the story, Que te dice la patria, which translates into what does the homeland tell you? So this story revolves around the narrator, which is Hemingway, basically. I think this is a autobiographical story, basically, of his observations traveling through fascist Italy a few years after Mussolini came to power.
So you think the I
Yeah,
as in
I
Hemingway, I.
yes, I yeah,
'Cause there's
I believe the eyes is Hemingway himself. We will confirm that and talk more about that probably in the wrap episode, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Hemingway himself. So in this first section, we meet Hemingway and his buddy Guy. They are driving through Italy,
Mhm.
and we start out in a small village, and we quickly learn that Hemingway, or the narrator character, is along because he speaks Italian, and Guy does not.
Guy's German.
Yes, yeah, South German, to be exact, as we'll find. And there's a crowd in a little village, and there's a guy there who asks to ride with them to the next town that they're going to, Spezia. And they agree to take him. He hops onto the side of the car. They're in a little 2-seater coupe. Sticks his arm through the window and rides along.
Almost
And
tipping the car over.
almost tipping the car over a few times. And we kind of go through. We get to the end of the trip. They get to a little bit outside of Spezia. The guy jumps out. Come to find out, he's a fascist. He says, that he's a fascist, and so he doesn't want to ride into town on the car. And they depart, and kind of the only thing there is he just sort of says thanks. And Hemingway, our narrator, points out that he doesn't use any kind of formal thank you. It says he uses the lowest form of the word thanks and just kind of takes off.
Well, he also offered to pay, and they were like, "Oh, nothing. You don't owe
Yeah,
us
don't worry about
anything."
it.
Like, why not?
Right.
Perhaps maybe he distrusts this. I don't know. How do you know he's a fascist? I mean, we know that this is Mussolini's Italy, but does it say that?
I believe it explicitly says he's a fascist. I think.
I know it does in
Yeah,
the.
right here it says when they come to they get to the car. Let's see.
You're right. I'm sure you're right.
Okay, it says so they say okay, you'll have to ride on the car. They tie the suitcase on, and he hands a package into the car for Hemingway to hold, and he shakes hands with all the people, and he explained that to a fascist and a man as used to traveling as himself, there was no discomfort.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So
So
he
yeah.
is a traveling man and a fascist, not
Right.
like to a fascist as one person and as a traveling man,
Right.
one
It says to
person.
a
But
fascist and a man as
yeah,
used to traveling as himself. Yeah. So it explicitly labels him a fascist.
So the fact that he put that in there with like fascist, there is no discomfort, and then that has one meaning, which is what it is, um, that I can't relate to, but I can relate to the idea of like a traveling person just wanting to get where they need to go, and you're either comfortable or you're often not. Okay, I get it. I see it now.
Yes. Which I think you pointing out, I had not caught this the first time through, but you pointing out that they didn't want any money from him, and and that sort of caused him to be suspicious towards them. So that, yeah, I think that ties into kind of the third part of this story that we'll get to in a little bit.
Yeah.
So anyway, I really like the line at the end where Hemingway says to Guy, he says, "That's a young man that will go a long way in Italy." And Guy says, "Well, he went 20 kilometers with us."
This story, I just hear like a back and forth of like a 1940s film with that kind of witty comedy. And, you've got Humphrey Bogart playing one person, and you've got, um, oh, who's our guy? Oh my God. George. Who's our guy?
You
George
mean
Bailey.
Jimmy Stewart?
It's Jimmy Stewart.
All
I
right.
just hear like a back and forth of this witty, dry humor. And I could just hear like, yeah, see, they went 20 kilometers with us,
I
see?
mean, yeah. All these stories are very snappy, the dialogue like
Yeah,
that.
I love it.
Yeah.
I
All right.
watched Harvey for the first time.
What's that?
I watched Harvey for the
Oh,
first
oh,
time.
did you? Okay.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I
Really?
was like, I did. I,
I thought it
I
was
loved it.
good.
Look, my Jimmy Stewart is uh It's a Wonderful Life, that Hitchcock movie, um, Rope, and now Harvey. And I've caught him in some other things, but never watched beginning to end. I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Anyway,
he's a good actor.
he's great. He's
Good
great.
good Pennsylvania boy. So then we get to the second bit of the story. So they get to Spezia, and the next section is called A Meal in Spezia. So they go looking for a place to eat, and they end up in a restaurant that feels a little weird. There's a couple of people in the restaurant. There is an older woman sitting at a table. There is a younger man in a suit by himself at a table. There's a sailor who doesn't seem to eat anything and is sort of disconsolate. He's sort of off on his own, wallowing in his sorrows. And they sort of line up some girls at the door to the kitchen. They're coming in and out. They order, and then a girl comes down and sits next to Guy, and starts putting his arm around her. And Guy says, "Do I have to let her put her arm around my neck?" And Hemingway answers, "Certainly. Mussolini has abolished the brothels. This is a restaurant." So
Talk about the witty back and forth, quippy humor here between these two
yes,
people, and the narrator does speak Italian, and they must both be speaking. Are they both speaking English, or are they both speaking German?
I
They could be
guess
either
they
one.
were doing German. It was my guess.
She says she speaks German. Ah, that's our answer. She says she speaks a little German.
Right.
And he's like, speak to her in German, and he won't. So it must be
Oh, right.
English
You're
back
right.
and
Yep.
forth.
Yep. You're right.
So
So they must be talking
asked and
English.
answered. Um,
Right. I love the fact that Hemingway kind of mistranslates a little bit. He's sort of playing around with Guy. Guy is
yeah,
obviously uncomfortable in the situation,
so
whereas
uncomfortable.
whereas the narrator is sort of messing with him. You know, the best part I think is when she says, "Tell him I love him" or something, and he says that, and Guy says, "Is that her saying that, or is that you saying that?" She says, "I love you." Is that you? Is that her, or are you saying that?
Tell him he's a beautiful boy. You're a beautiful boy. Who
Right,
says so? You or her?
right. Oh, it's fantastic. So it's interesting because they're trying to get out of there, obviously, and the guy in the suit finally kind of gets fed up with the scene, and he's like, "Quit wasting your time. These guys aren't worth anything. Quit wasting your time." And then when they leave, just before they leave, they notice that everybody is sitting together, eating together at the table. So except for the sailor who's still, wallowing in his sorrows off at the other table. So yeah, I thought this was a good one. I enjoyed this little bit, right?
Well, they wanted a simple meal, and
They did.
whatever the line is it at the end or is it at the beginning where they're like, you wanted a simple meal. This is complicated.
Right, it's in the beginning. Yeah, he says, I want a
Yeah.
simple meal. This isn't simple, this is complicated.
And then the back and forth about bananas, I'm like, I think there's a joke here, and I'm not getting it, or am I getting it?
Yes. I wasn't sure either, because he said, do we have any, do you have any dessert? Well, we have fruit.
We have bananas.
And he's like, oh, okay, bananas have a peel on them. That's okay. I'm assuming like it's pesticides or rotten fruit, or like insects
know.
would have eaten the fruit if it was like an apple, but a banana has a thicker skin, so it's safe to eat.
The phrasing, though, oh, he takes bananas. She embraced a guy.
Yeah, so he
You
takes bananas.
take bananas? She's pleased because you take bananas. Tell her I don't take bananas.
Right, the signor does not take bananas.
Oh, he doesn't take bananas.
It's so bizarre. Tell her I take a cold bath every morning. He takes a cold bath every morning. No understand, the lady says. I didn't understand that either.
No,
I mean,
there is definitely an innuendo joke in there that I'm like,
is that a shrinkage joke? Is that she trying to tell him, like, guy's not equipped? I don't know. It's
was
very
she
strange.
excited? Was it like a gay joke? Like, oh, I take bananas. So she's like, oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, maybe this guy will pay me.
It's not my
Okay.
turn.
Yeah.
It's not for me.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I
Th-
liked
this-
it though,
Well, this whole
despite not understanding it.
right. This whole section very much brought to mind, my first tour in Korea. Because that is very prevalent. Obviously now we know a lot more about human trafficking, but girls will be brought in from the Philippines into the bars, and then you have to buy $5 glasses of orange juice for them. And anyway, they're trying to work off their debt to get their passports back so they can get out of there. It's a very, very sad situation. It's very, very disgusting. Very exploitive of these girls. But that's what it reminded me of. You're in a regular bar, regular place, and then these girls just come up to you. Like, you can't just go have a drink. These girls come up to you and they are putting their arms around you and asking them to buy you a drink, and you're just like, can I just? I'm here with these guys. I'm just hanging out. I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah, just have a simple meal. I don't want it to be
Exactly.
complicated.
Exactly.
So $5 glasses of orange juice, you had to buy them?
Right. Yeah. You're buying them a drink, but it's just orange juice because obviously they can't drink on the job or whatever. It would be.
Oh, I didn't know that was
Well, it
obvious,
would be
but
bad for them to get
I mean,
drunk. So,
Sure.
you buy an expensive glass of orange juice for them, so they have something to drink and spend time with you.
And then you have to pay them for the time at all? Like, I feel like, is
Well,
there like
that's buying the drink. Is you gotta keep buying. I guess eventually you pay for sex if you want to do that, but
Right. But I was thinking, like, maybe if they're like, oh, well, we're not going to get that out of you, but you need to pay me for my company. I'm good company.
Yes, that's what it is.
Like-
Yes,
Yeah.
you gotta keep buying the $5 orange juice or else she's not to keep sitting there.
Oh, well, that's fine. I don't have any orange juice. Goodbye.
Right, exactly.
Does that work?
It's like the guy. Hey, this. I'm not buying you a drink. These guys aren't worth anything. Leave them alone. Like,
Yeah.
you're not getting
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
out of these guys. Yeah, exactly. Then we get to the last section of the book, or story, after the rain. So they go out, and it was raining, and they kind of got muddy, and they stop to eat again. And when they come out, they notice that it's kind of mud covered. So they clean off the license plate, and as we see, this is kind of important. And they get stopped at a railroad crossing, And there's a guy on a bike, a bicycle, and he's got a pistol. So another fascist. I guess a traffic cop is kind of the implication. But he tells them, he can't see your license plate. It's covered in mud. And he's like, no, I just cleaned it, man. He's like, oh, it's going to be 25 lira. I can't see your plate. And he's kind of argues with him. And he says, okay, well, it's 50 lira then,
Because he insulted Italy's roads.
Exactly.
It's dirty from the road. Oh, you don't like Italian roads?
Right.
50.
And then they get into a little back and forth about the receipt. And so this is, so the first part, obviously, it's pretty, you shake him down for money. We can kind of understand it. But then he gets into, our narrator asks for a receipt with his name. So the guy pulls out his receipt book, and there's no carbon copy, but it's got 2 copies of the receipt. So he fills it out twice and tears it off and hands it to him. And he says, hey, this is for 25 lira. And he says, oh, I'm sorry. And he takes it, he changes it to 50. And the narrator says, the other side that you're keeping, make sure that says 50 too.
Mm-hmm.
And so he kind of smirks and doesn't let him see what he's doing. So this is where I didn't understand what was going on. I mean, is he going to contest the ticket and say, well, I gave him 50, here's my receipt, and the cop says, well, here, I've got a receipt for 25, so here's your 25 back. And then the cop still is 25 up? I mean...
I read it as this one puffs his chest, this one puffs his chest with whatever words that they have that don't... It's like, I'm gonna call my lawyer. You don't have one, but it's a thing you say to try to gain power. It's like, put your name on that. With whom am I speaking?
Yeah, what's your badge
I speak
number?
to your manager, and it's like, you're not gonna do any of those things.
Right.
Yeah, what's your badge number was the next one. It's like,
exactly. Yeah.
Who are you gonna call? Everybody who supports that person?
Right. Yeah, he's with the regime. I mean, the fascists
Yeah.
are in charge. What are you gonna do? Anyway, so he says he lets him go, and they drive on, and the story ends with a great. I love the summation line, the final line of the story, where it says the whole trip had only taken 10 days. He says, naturally, in such a short trip, we had no opportunity to see how things were with the country or the people, which is just a fantastic ending.
Why?
Why?
I mean, I think so.
Yeah, okay.
But...
Well, because obviously, I mean, he's showing us, he's very wryly saying this, but obviously showing us quite clearly how conditions are in fascist Italy, and I think we can say not good. That's our takeaway? Fascism is not great.
Is that also the safe thing to say, though? Were you to go back to fascist Italy, and had you written a letter or been published in a whatever, say it is Hemingway, and they read it and you go back to Italy and the fascists are like, hey, you said that thing about us. You're like, no, I said I didn't have time to see anything. I don't know what it's like here.
This is true. He doesn't explicitly draw any conclusions. He lets the reader draw conclusions. Yeah. Which I think is the brilliance of the writing.
Yeah.
Right? He lets the writing and the experiences speak for himself without having to spell it out and say, fascists are bad.
So what is the conclusion then, other than fascists are bad? So they have no brothels, though. It's a simple spaghetti dinner. Doesn't that seem good? The roads are kind of bad, crooked cops, and people who don't thank you properly when you don't make them pay you.
I think just the suspicion. I think that the first section is showing us just the suspicion of the conditions in the country. The fact that the guy got off the car and wanted to walk into town. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he didn't want to be seen doing whatever it was he was doing.
Right, coming in with these Westerners or non-Italians, didn't want to be associated with them.
Well, in our wrap episode, we're going to have plenty to talk about with all the subtext and the the simple writing that I think and many people think says so much, but you have to infer it.
Right.
And so while it seems clear, how much are you putting on it versus what it's really saying, which whatever, who cares what it's really saying?
Yeah.
But it's, and that's my opinion. What did you get? Oh, I look blurry. Okay.
Yeah. No, I
Sorry.
agree. Agreed.
I don't mean to be blurry. Hi.
No worries. All right, so that gets us into our second story, 50 grand. This is yours.
This is
And
mine.
yeah, and this was the story of Jack the Boxer.
Yep.
You want to start breaking it down?
So basically, Jack the Boxer has to fight Walcott. And Jack is like past his prime or like right
Yeah.
towards the end. And he's tired. He misses his wife. He misses his kids. Does he have kids?
I think he
misses
has
the
kids.
wife.
Yeah, I think he has kids.
It's the wife that's the focus, really. He does miss the
Yeah.
kids. I think he mentions them once. But all signs point to he's good and was good.
Right.
And he's getting ready to fight this Walcott who's up and coming.
Right.
Now,
Well, I mean,
Jack
this is a. I think this is the title fight
well,
because at
Jack
the end,
has the title.
Right.
Yeah.
Jack has a title, so he is good. Yeah, he's
Walcott's looking to unseat.
right.
I don't know if that's the proper terminology, unseat.
Yeah.
In the world
Yeah,
of
take
boxing. I've
take the
decided.
belt. Yeah. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jack's at a fitness farm where they do training, but also you could pay to go and stay as like a
Yeah, like a health resort.
civilian. Yeah, like a
Sure.
health resort. There's a brief moment of this character named Soldier. So we've got Jack. He's going to fight Walcott. We've got so Jack is Irish, and Walcott is I forget. Walcott is
Is he Polish?
not Irish.
Right.
Swede. He's a Swede.
He's sweet.
I think they said Swede. Anyway, I think it's the Jewish mafia or
Yeah.
whatever the version of mafia is if you're Jewish. Come and visit him, and it's like a seedy, underhanded, you're not quite sure what's happening, but there's something going on.
Right.
Hogan, who owns the farm, Danny Hogan, his health farm over in Jersey.
It's all in the up and up.
Yeah. They think, well, I think that they've got him to throw the fight. And
Right.
or he's going to lose, like it's all settled. And you don't really know what's going on until Jack decides to drink a lot one night because he can't sleep.
Right.
Now, he doesn't often drink. He's in good shape. He doesn't drink a lot. But this night, he decides, I am going to sleep tonight. And so he keeps drinking whiskey. And I love the back and forth between him and his friend. He's like, put some water in it. Put water in it as he gets drunker and drunker. He's
Right.
like, come on, put some water in that one, Jack.
A terrible way to get sleep, by the way. Just throwing that
Yeah,
out
you
there.
don't get good sleep just
No.
because you pass out. Anyway, Jack reveals that he's got money on the fight. He's got 50 grand that Walcott will win. And he's basically said, look, I don't stand a chance. I can't win anyway. So what's the point? Why wouldn't I get some money out of it?
Right.
And not that I'm not going to try. I'll try. I'm going to try.
You got to put on a show.
But I can't. I'm not going to win. And his friend doesn't say too much other than put some water in it. So I don't know if he's like just resigned or doesn't take too much stock. And they reconvene at
Right.
breakfast that morning. And he's like, hey, what did I say? Did I say anything about like the fight? And he's like, yeah, you said you had money on it. You said you had 50 grand. He's like, yeah. Like,
Okay.
that's a lot of money.
Yeah. It's probably
And
all his winnings from being the champ.
yeah. And the one thing about this story that gets me is the waiting. There's so much waiting. Like the day of the fight, it's raining. They
Yeah.
go to New York. It's in Madison Square Garden, isn't it? It's like a
Yeah.
huge,
It's a big fight. Yeah.
huge deal.
Well, it's a championship. Yeah.
And they're just waiting. They go get some dinner. They play a bunch of backgammon, which this is not an exciting game to me. I know you used to
Wow.
play a lot of it.
Backgammon's fantastic. What are you talking about?
See,
It's
there
not
we
an
go.
exciting game.
There we go.
What?
There we go.
What? Oh my goodness.
Tell me what's exciting about backgammon.
Oh, it's
Go.
fantastic. Anyway, it's a great game.
They have money on that too. They keep, you know, winning little bits of money off of each other.
Well,
They
it's
play
a it's
like
a
two
it's a
rounds.
betting game. I mean, it has a
Oh, I didn't know
die
that.
specifically. Yeah, it has a die specifically for betting in it.
I thought it was just math. Like you and Dad used to play it, and I just would like move the pegs around, like boop boop boop.
Are
This
you thinking of
seems boring.
cribbage? Backgammon has
Oh,
stones. Cribbage has
maybe I'm
pegs.
thinking of cribbage.
You're probably thinking of cribbage. They're
Isn't
both
that
good.
what they play? Which one do they play?
You said backgammon. Don't they play backgammon? I think they play
I think they might
backgammon.
be playing cribbage.
Are
And
they?
I just blanked on backgammon.
Thought it was backgammon.
Yeah. Oh, it's totally
let's see.
cribbage. And that's
Is it
exactly
cribbage?
what I was thinking of. Yeah. No, backgammon's kind of cool. It's got like that little briefcase thing,
Well,
and you
that's
open it.
well. It's I mean, I had a board like that. It doesn't have to be a board like that.
Oh,
You
well,
know. Anyway,
core memories, Kyle. I associate these
Yeah,
things in
well,
my formative years.
it was that briefcase set that Uncle Drew got out of the trash. Remember when he was hauling trash? Somebody had thrown it out. It was a perfectly good set. And
he got a lot of things that fell off the truck.
he
I've
did.
heard.
He got it out of the trash or whatever, and gave it to me.
Lucky you.
It was great. I probably still have it. I love it. It's a fantastic set.
But it's cribbage. You used to play cribbage too.
I play both. Yeah, cribbage is cards. Cribbage is a card game.
But it's got that wooden block with the pegs.
Right. That's to keep track of your score because you score so quickly.
Oh, that's it? That's just like the
Yeah.
scoring mechanism?
That's just the scoring mechanism. That's all. Yep.
It's elaborate.
You don't
Like a
need
wooden
it. It's
block
just
with
that
these little
points
pegs.
rack up so quickly.
Oh.
It's just a fast way to score it. I mean, you could just keep it on pen and paper if you want, but it's not as much fun.
Interesting. Is that a betting game or they were just turning it into a betting game?
You could bet on points as well, and if you beat somebody by, you could double them and get. But backgammon is more explicitly, backgammon explicitly has a die, which you can choose to double, and then if you choose to double, your opponent then has to either forfeit or accept the double, basically, and then
As like, and money exchanges hands, or you just
it
win or
would,
lose?
yeah. I mean, if you're playing for money, sure.
All right. Well, they sit around, they play cribbage, which doesn't sound exciting to me. Certainly not like Uno, which is the best card game
I
for me.
I had a huge cribbage phase
You did.
when I was
remember.
in my basic course back right after graduating college. Because there was another guy. He was a big cribbage player. Just randomly, we both. I don't know how we discovered that we both liked cribbage, but man, that guy, he counted cards so fast. If I didn't count my cards fast enough, he would just like grab them out of my hand and be like, "You have 8. Come on, let's go." And he'd start dealing again. Like he was not wasting time.
Jeez.
Because we would play like on every break. We would play like after class. We played a ton of cribbage.
Was it like just a fast moving game? Like you could squeeze it in 10
Yeah,
minutes?
you could squeeze it in 10 minutes. Yeah, I mean, it goes if you're counting quickly. I don't count quickly, but he would just like glance at his cards, know what to throw. And anyway, he was a fast player.
I would be out. I'd be like, hold on.
Yes.
What?
Well, I mean, by the end of that 6 months that we hung out together, I was quite good. I could count quickly. I haven't played in a long time though.
You had to. You had to step up.
You had to. Exactly.
Anyway, they're having an exciting lead up to the fight. The fight goes a long time. And
It goes 12 rounds.
the narrative switches. Like this was hard to read aloud I told you my struggles with this. It's just the
Yeah.
back and forth of all of the dialogue quickly changing, multiple characters.
Right.
Sometimes I have to go back and figure out who's talking. And then sometimes it would be too much of like said so and so said. So I'm like,
Well, a
God,
lot of it's not
okay.
attributed to. Like it's just,
Yeah.
who's talking. Yeah.
And to read aloud that many characters,
Yep.
it was difficult. This changes to very just no dialogue, very narrative form of the action and what's going on. And what it comes down to is Walcott hits him below the belt real hard,
Right.
real hard. And I think it's either said explicitly or insinuated that any normal fight, like you would be out. Like he was hurt big time. And he does not take that as an out or a win by,
Right. We'll get to that. But anyway, go ahead.
and basically they keep going and then he does it. So the referee's like, oh, he did that. And he's like, oh, no, 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 it's an accident. It's fine. It's fine. I can keep
Right.
going.
Right.
So he doesn't take the foul.
Right.
And then he does the same thing to Walcott. And that's how he loses. Walcott takes a foul and
Right.
wins that way.
Right. Well, because he has to take it, because if he doesn't, he loses his money. I mean,
Yeah.
Walcott would foul out and he would lose the fight and Jack would win.
Yeah. And the whole point, I think, for Jack, he still feels like he has left with on his terms in some way.
Sure. Well, I
What does he
think,
say?
I
Go
mean,
ahead.
they get all the way to the 12th round. So
Yeah.
basically, Jack's like, he probably, he apparently had a good fight. I mean, he lasted all 12 rounds with this kid. And so he can't leave it up to a judge's decision of maybe losing or maybe winning,
Yeah.
right? So he's got to foul him and make sure that he wins his bet and loses the fight, right? You got to make sure
Yeah.
that Walcott wins.
What does he say where it makes it seem like for me, I would think a fighter who's dedicated his life and he's the champion doing this despite the money would make you feel kind of crappy.
Yeah.
Like integrity wise, like honor wise, pride wise. Um, but it makes it seem like no, it's not. I don't feel that way.
Yeah. Well, this is, it's Pulp Fiction, right?
I continue.
The Bruce Willis story in Pulp Fiction, right? Where Marcellus Wallace is giving Butch the money to take the fall, and he tells him, he's like, it's pride, man. Like, you're gonna hear pride. Like, you gotta screw pride, take the money, take the fall, right? Because you're gonna get in that ring, and your pride is gonna get the better of you, and you're gonna fight. He's like, no, you gotta take the fall. But what happens when Butch gets in the
Well,
ring? He wins the fight, right? I think he kills the guy, right? And then he takes the money and he's got to skip town,
yeah.
right? And then of course everything else happens, and when they get to they get to the
Well,
shop.
they don't talk
But
about
anyway.
it, but they're cool. They're fine.
Yeah, by the end of it, he says, they square up. But anyway,
Yeah, they're square. I just watched that getting tattooed a little bit ago. It was on. They had like multiple TVs, and I had to read the captions or whatever, but it was just me and my tattoo artist, who's pretty awesome. It's a chick, but I was like, this scene is fun. I'm glad no one else is here. You're looking at my leg, doing your thing, and I'm watching, and there's no one else here. Because the shop was empty because it was the Philadelphia Tattoo Convention, and she
oh,
didn't.
nice.
She
didn't
had my
go?
appointment, so she didn't go. She didn't want to go. She
Oh,
said,
okay.
but everyone else was gone,
Nice.
so it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But
Anyway, great movie. Problematic in parts, of course. but still. Anyway, I gotta stop thinking about Pulp Fiction now. You get me? It's
I
like
remember it when that came out, what, in
94.
94?
Yeah.
But I remember it like in 96. Maybe it's a false memory, but it was on or you rented it. We were in our second house, the duplex one, and I wanted to watch it. And mom was like, no,
I wasn't
you
there. I
cannot.
saw it in the theater. It was the first
In
R-rated movie I saw.
94?
First R-rated movie I saw in the theater.
That's an intense R-rated, like,
Yeah.
that's an intense
It's a good
R-rated
movie
movie
though.
to see.
It's a good movie though.
No, it's a great movie. I know. But mom was like, you cannot see it.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, the neighbors let me watch Interview with a Vampire, so you
Can't be
don't know
that
what I
bad, right?
do when you're not around.
Such a rebel. All right.
Anyway,
So anyway, so Jack hits Walcott below the belt and loses the fight, thus winning his bet. Which, if we're taking these stories to be around 1924 ish, early 20s, 50 grand is about $900,000.
a
So
lot of money.
it's a good chunk of change. You can retire on that, I think.
Yeah. He was really hurt though. Like
Yeah. I'm all
that
busted
the
inside, he says.
so that means does Walcott know about the deal? I read that he did. Like I felt like
Oh,
there
really?
was language in there that made it seem like he did. But maybe not because otherwise why would you sock someone so low below the belt when you would lose? Unless he was like, I'm done, I'm out. Because I love the way the narrative did the fight. It was like Jack was so good. And he was
Right.
just lining the lefts up, hitting him in the face. Like he couldn't miss.
Right.
And then suddenly he was still doing the same thing, but he got a lot slower. And he was trying. And I felt like, oh, well, there's the thing that he thought was going to happen anyway. There's
Yeah.
the thing that he said, I can't win. I can't, basically, my stamina. He's not sleeping. He misses his wife. His heart
Right.
didn't seem in it. He'd like given up before it was over or before he'd even made the deal. I don't know.
Yeah.
Is this when so the friends Morgan and Steinfeld that came out to the farm and then we don't get to see what they talk about, but he makes
Right.
the bet. Was that beforehand? Were they coming to proposition him at that exact moment and he'd never thought of it?
I mean, it's left vague, which is kind of cool. That
Yeah.
it's up to interpretation. I took it definitely as they were coming in, telling him to take the fall.
Like it
Right.
wasn't a question, it's like you're doing this.
Right. Like you're going down. We have money on Walcott. Walcott's the next big thing. Your time is done. Here's a nice payout. You take the fall, you take the money, you go retire. It's all good. You're done, man. Like you're past. We're putting you out to pasture. Is how I took it.
All right. There's these an additional theme I think that we're seeing of like we saw it in the one with the soldiers, like people being done with the thing that was their
Right.
thing,
Right.
I can't be that anymore. I can't do that anymore. It's not worth it anymore.
Right.
And then how they handle that or deal with it.
Well, same thing with the bullfighter. I mean, in our first
That's
story,
that's the one. Yes. Yeah.
the aging bullfighter trying to go in for one last score, and at the end of it, he's kind of taken out of it. What are you going to do now, kind of thing. That one's a little sadder because obviously in this one, Jack's going to get a nice payout and he'll be all right. But
Yeah, he just gets stomped by a bull and they cut his hair off
yeah,
at the end when he's trying to heal.
yeah. All right. Well, that
All
brings
right.
us up to our next story, A Simple Inquiry, and this one is very short. But basically, we've got some Italian soldiers at a little command post out in the snow, and we've got this major who is it's kind of gruesome how sun snowburned he is, and he's like putting
Mm.
oil on his flaking sunburnt
Ugh.
leathery face. I viscerally felt this one. I got a really bad sunburn one summer in Texas, and I had a patch, probably, I don't know, 3 inches by 2 inches on my forehead that like burnt so bad it leathered up, and it was discolored for maybe a year, 2 years. I mean, it was like I could see it for
Yeah.
forever.
Did it blister and scab?
It leathered over. I mean, and then flaked off, and oh, it was so. Anyway, I could just feel this guy's face with the oil that he's putting on. So then he goes to lay down, and sort of his servant boy comes in to put some fire on, and he calls him into the bedroom, and he kind of starts talking to him, and he starts talking to him about love, and if he's ever been in love, and does he love this girl? Because I guess apparently the officers in the Italian army get to read all of your mail. I guess they censor the mail. And so he's read all these letters, and he says, you don't talk about love to her. You don't write her very often. Are you sure you love her? And he's like, yes, I'm sure I love her, sir. And then he asks him, are you sure you're not corrupt? And he says, I don't know what you mean, corrupt. He's like, all right, fine. You don't need to be superior about it. Like, all right, bro. Anyway, and he says, go on back what you're doing. And he says, I'll send you back to your unit if you like, but it's better if you stay on as my servant, because then you won't get killed. And so then the kid goes out, and then he comes back in and brings more wood, and it just ends with him going, the major saying, I wonder if he lied to me. So this one, very short, but interesting. A lot of talking around things in this one.
Well, you missed you missed the most important part.
What was the most important part?
Well, he's like, and you're not corrupt.
Right.
And he's like, I don't know what you mean. You need to be superior. He's like, and you don't really
don't really want right. And
your great desire isn't really.
All
like,
right,
you're
get out of here. Get out of here. Get out of here. Yeah.
Get out. But don't be superior, and be careful someone else doesn't come along and take you.
Right.
Don't worry, I won't touch you. You can go back to your platoon. Like,
right.
That's the inquiry. Are you gay? Can we get together? No?
Right.
All right. You sure?
Yeah.
Fine.
All right. I won't do anything to you. I won't force it, but you probably should stay on and keep working with me. If maybe I've made things weird. So
maybe I made things weird.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe. Well, I think the fact that he came back in and says when he comes back in, it says he was flushed and moved differently than when he had moved when he brought the wood for the fire. And the adjutant, the other guy, the sergeant that's kind of helping with the major, it just says he looks at him and smiles. So he knows what's up, obviously.
Then he calls him a little devil.
Yeah, little devil.
Little devil. I wonder if he lied to me. I think he lied. I think there's a second part to this story.
It probably is, but yeah. So what'd you think of this one?
It's so quick, and again, the subtext and the quietness and in one respect, this is happening in the fictional world. Like, these things happened in this random fictional world. Well, that random fictional world is in my brain, and I'm filling in the subtext. I'm putting sauce on Little Devil. I'm putting meaning into this because that meaning exists in the world, I think.
Oh, it totally exists. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But again, Hemingway just is masterful at not saying something and yet there it is.
Right. Yeah.
And then, except that I feel like there's not enough that if you profess and you rail and you're like, this is what it means, people could be like,
Yeah.
but maybe not.
It
And
leaves it enough open. I mean, this was kind of
this was pretty
blatant.
good.
It's pretty blatant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though it doesn't come out and say anything, but it comes out pretty blatant. This one, again, I love how these stories, I have to remember that these are written in the 1920s,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of these stories, especially like our first one, I mean, he's writing about these foreign places, and most readers are not traveling to foreign. I mean, even nowadays, most Americans don't travel much outside of the country. So it's almost giving people a glimpse into other places and cultures that they wouldn't normally have gotten. I thankfully I never got to serve in Afghanistan. I think it's much more widespread there. But I have served in Middle Eastern army or with Middle Eastern armies in the Middle East, and they have these servant people that work for senior officers. Usually they're civilian. They're not usually uniformed personnel, but they're the tea boys that come in, and they're the ones that make the tea and serve the tea when you have guests and bring in the snacks and do all that kind of thing. Again, there are other countries that are a little more blatant about it. At least in the countries I've been in, they are adult men. They're not young boys. But there are places in the world that use very young boys.
This kid's 19 in the story, which is
Right. He's also a soldier. I mean,
young enough.
He's also an Italian soldier. I'm talking about like 13, 14. Yeah. I mean, or cabin boys on old warships.
That's a thing.
Yeah.
That's what a cabin boy is.
That's what a cabin boy was. Yeah.
I always thought like cabin boy and pool boy were the same.
No, no, a cabin boy, sometimes referred to as peg boys, and I'll just leave that as is.
Great.
Yeah. Yep. So this stuff is obviously it exists, and I think this is almost like a it's not a travel log per se, but I think it's exposing American audiences that maybe didn't have this stuff explicitly, not quite explicitly, but at least talked about in literature, prior to this.
Yeah, and this whole collection came out in 1927.
Right.
So I'm thinking there's a good bit of the population where they don't have any idea what this one is about. Just
maybe not.
And then there's a good deal of the population that's like,
oh yeah,
know what it's about, and then probably a good bit of the population that's like, oh, maybe I feel seen by this. Like these two people, it seems a little creepy at first, but then it ultimately feels respectful. He's like, don't worry, you can leave if you want, I won't bother you.
Yeah, he was trying to ask without. I mean, nowadays you can just ask, right? Like, or I think nowadays it's more in the open and you don't really have to ask per se, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a little more obvious. But back then the major's he's trying to figure it out without outing himself, basically.
He's like, there's something missing in your letters that would be there,
right?
If
something
really else were true about
girl. You, right?
Yeah. And the way he answers, he's like, I've been with girls. He's like, that's not what I asked.
Right. Yeah.
I asked you if you were in love with this girl. He's like, yes.
I am sure. Yeah. And you're sure that you're not corrupt? What do you mean? Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what you mean, corrupt. Oh, don't be superior.
You're right. Yeah, he just jumps right to that. I almost felt for the poor kid. He's like, oh, like I don't know. What do you want from me, man? Like,
yeah.
He's
not that into you, all right?
Or I took that. I almost took that as he's not in the know as much, or not in the lifestyle. You know what I mean? Like the fact that the major said, "You're sure you're not corrupt," and he says, "I don't know what you mean." Do you think he was playing coy, or do you think he honestly didn't know?
I mean, let's play it both ways. He honestly
out.
didn't know, and then suddenly he does know when he's like, "Ah, don't be superior," and he's like, "Oh,
Right.
So he's not in the know. He is in the know, and he's like, "Well, I can't admit to that. I shouldn't admit to that, right?" And
Right. And
like
again, this is
that.
Hemingway leaving it up. Like, you could read it either way. You could either read it as he's naive and legit doesn't know what the major's talking about. So when the major's like, don't be superior. Or you could read it as he knows what the major's talking about. And he's like, oh, no, no, that's not me, man.
Yeah,
And then the major's, you know, his rebuke is warranted.
I mean the the problem with not being able to like be out and be yourself and have that be accepted by everyone is that everyone's got to be surreptitious about it
Right.
and decipher and figure out and hints here and there, and you probably get it right most of the time, but when you don't, it could mean, I mean, maybe not in this story, maybe in this story, I'm not sure, but it could mean you die.
Yeah.
Someone is like, they kill you because
Yeah.
you thought that you saw something in them, and maybe you did, but then they get offended and they have their own internalized hatred, and then it could go very poorly.
Sure. It definitely could. It definitely could.
So all the subtext in the story also, though, I think is warranted and necessary in the lives of perhaps the Pinin is his name, and then
Yeah.
the major.
Right.
Pinin?
Yeah, the name too
Pinin?
even is I mean I
Pinin?
don't
I don't
speak
know.
Italian, but yeah, is that anyway, is that a pseudo phallic name? I don't know. Anyway. All
Barely,
right.
barely pseudo.
Barely pseudo. It's the subtext, it's almost text, right?
Hmm.
All right, so that brings us to our final story. 10
That's what
Indians.
makes me sad.
This one's a very sad one, yeah. So this tells the story of Nick, who's hanging out with the Garner family, and they go into town for a 4th of July celebration, and they come back. Now, the story is called 10 Indians, but they pass 9 Indians passed out on the road, and there's, a little bit of racism in here, and they,
A
it's just
little bit.
a little bit, yeah, those
Dripping
Indians,
with.
dripping with. And there's some back and forth between Garner and his wife and the boys, and they it ends up they start ribbing Nick about the fact that he's dating an Indian girl.
Prudence, her
And
name is.
Prudence, yes, Prudence Mitchell. And Nick kind of plays it off. She's not my girl, but inside he's smiling. He's like, oh yeah, they got me, they got me.
I I love the way that what how that was written. What did he say? He felt
Happy,
hollow and happy, which those two things you do not usually put together. I
right?
fully get the idea of I feel happy that I'm trying to deny that I have this relationship. Ah, no, I'm not with that person. And you're like, oh, well, I kind of am, and
Kind
they
of,
know
yeah,
it, and we're a thing. And perhaps the hollow is I'm happy that I'm with that person, and yet these are all a bunch of racist jerks, and I'm not actually
right.
allowed to, I'm not supposed to.
It would be
And
looked down
so,
upon. Yeah,
yeah, your happiness is then gutted. So maybe I do get it
yeah.
for Nick
So he's a little of
and
both because
Prudence.
he's hearing everything that they're saying. You know. Anyway, so he already anyway, and he's been hanging out with these people, and they're his friends and neighbors, and so he just had a good time at the 4th of July. And now they're talking about these Indians in this way, and he's thinking, oh, my girl Prudence. They're kind of talking about her, and
Yeah, and then explicitly talking about her.
right, yeah. Anyway,
And the whole
so yeah,
yeah,
go
I was
ahead.
gonna say the whole thing starts off because someone's drunk in the road
Right,
and it's an Indian and they stop and they pull him out of the road. And I think, I mean, it's 4th of July, and the fact that the idea of Indians, Native Americans celebrating 4th of July, which I don't know, seems like
yeah.
not something to be celebrated, and
Probably not
perhaps
their favorite holiday.
no, and the celebration isn't the celebration and the level of like getting drunk in a jovial attitude that we would think of, or like your, what's the word? Your
A celebratory manner.
Yeah, I think that there again subtext.
Yeah.
If you're a Native American, if you're an Indian, getting drunk on Fourth of July might have a totally different meaning than "oh yay, celebration."
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the implication, definitely. Well, they get home, and then Nick goes home, and his dad's there, and so they kind of chat a little bit about the 4th of July and how was it, and he's got some pie and chicken. You know, he has a little dinner for him. Um, and then, he says to his dad, "So what'd you do, Dad? You know, I went to this baseball game with the Gardeners, and we enjoyed 4th of July. What'd you do?" "Well, I went out fishing." And turns out he went up by the Indian camp in the afternoon, and he ended up seeing his son's friend Prudence. And this is just very odd for I can't imagine as a father. I don't know doing this, but says, "Yeah, I saw your friend. She was in the woods with Frank Washburn." Like, "Oh, really? What were they doing?" "I don't know." "What were they doing?" "I don't know. I just heard them threshing around."
Threshing.
That's a great, yeah. It's a great visual.
Maybe they were like cutting down the
Yeah. They're
overgrowth.
getting down the wheat. They were threshing wheat. Anyway,
How'd you know it was them? I saw them. I thought you said you didn't see them. Oh yeah, I saw them.
I saw him. Yeah, Dad was watching. That's all right.
Who was it? Frank Washburn.
Washburn. Telling you.
Were they what? Were they happy? Like,
I guess so. Sure, man. I mean, I guess.
and he was crying. He
Yeah.
brings him some pie. That's so nice.
Let's
You're
have some more
crying.
pie.
Your heart's broken.
No,
Here's
I
some
don't
more
want any more
huckleberry
pie.
pie, my son.
I don't want any more pie.
Go to
So
bed, Nick.
Nick goes to bed, and yeah, he has a broken heart, and he lays there, and he finally forgets to think, and then he goes to sleep, and wakes up, and is awake a long time, and then remembers his heart is broken.
Now, do you think what were you gonna say?
I was just saying, this is like a gut wrenching ending to the story. It's a you know
Why do you
punch
think
to the
gut
stomach.
wrenching?
Well, it's just sad. He's
It's sad.
heartbroken. Yeah, it's just very.
But he forgot. He forgot he was heartbroken.
Is that how you read it?
I don't see. I don't know. So here's one reading. Young guy, kind of dating Prudence,
Right.
not out in the open enough, or the culture of the time doesn't allow them to be out in the open enough, and therefore, where is it really going anyway? But he loves her anyway. And then he finds she's with someone else, and maybe it's not mature enough, or he's not mature enough, and he forgets about it. It wasn't that important. Or he just kind of went to sleep and he woke up and he was happy and he was fine. And then he was like, oh,
That's that
that's
was my reading.
right.
That was my reading. That he
Yeah,
woke up and he's like, "Oh, it's a beautiful day. What am I gonna do today? Maybe I'll go. Oh, I guess I won't."
I
You
think
know.
that one's probably right.
Yeah. That's. I mean, that's how I read it. But it felt sad because it's contrasting like the beautiful morning and the waves and it's beautiful. He wakes in the middle of the night. It says he awoke in the night and he heard the wind in the hemlock trees outside the cottage and the waves of the lake coming in on the shore, and he went back to sleep. Like that just I was very excited today because it got up to 60, so I got to open the windows a little bit. Like I am dying for it to be
Yes.
coolish in the evening to have the windows open because I love waking up in the middle of the night and hearing night sounds outside the window. That's one of my favorite things. So, when he wakes up in the night and he hears this outside his cottage, like it's just such a beautiful picture. And then getting to fall back asleep in the middle of the night. But then in the morning, there's that heartbreak.
I know you love to fall
I
asleep.
do. I love falling asleep.
That's like,
It's fantastic.
like, wake me up. Why wake you up? So that I can fall asleep.
Yes, that sensation is it's amazing. I love it. Oh,
I agree. I love it, but don't wake me up. Don't, do not bother me when I'm asleep.
I love if I wake up between like 1 and 2:30, I am so happy. Oh, it's and I get to fall back asleep. I hate waking up and it's like 3:40 and you're
Mm,
like, oh, because then you know I'm only gonna get like a little bit more
yeah.
sleep before the morning. But I'm awake at 2 a.m. Oh, perfect. I'm gonna fall back asleep for a couple hours. Love it.
There is that, like, one of the kids, somebody, we're in a rhythm where somebody wakes up at least once. It's usually it's Viola right now. She woke up and like zombified walked to her room and I glanced at the clock and it was only like 12:30
Oh
and
my
I was like,
goodness,
"Oh, this is fine. I could do
this
this.
is great. It's going
This is
right back to
nothing."
bed.
She did it at like 4 yesterday and I was like, "This is the worst. I
Oh
hate this.
yeah,
4 is not good."
exactly. Because you got to be up in a few hours. Oh
His heartbreak is so, yeah. Viola asked me if hearts can break and I was like, well, no, like I got real like technical about it, not realizing
yes.
like she was talking about she got it from like a movie where someone had a heartbreak and and eventually I was like, well, not your real heart inside your body, but some people describe and like I was trying to be real technical and she's like love. It's like, yeah, like love.
She's got it. Your
I
job's
was like, never
done.
mind, I'll stop. I'll shut up now.
Yeah, you already understand it, kid. You're fine. Uh, anyway.
Which one of these was your like favorite
Oh my
blurry
goodness. They
again?
were all this section I liked because they were all good. The first section I didn't I thought they were all good. Don't get me wrong. But I think this one they were all phenomenal. I think every one of them was you could feel and put yourself in these situations. The evocative imagery, was just so good in all four of these stories.
Mm,
I don't know. I love them all for different reasons. The atmospherics of the Simple Inquiry, like the snow and talking about the the wind coming in on the one side of the cottage and the brightness, and the heartbreak of the last one is fantastic. I guess you know. I guess 50 Grand was the most similar to what we've already read because it's the aging
mm,
boxer. It felt
mm-hmm.
a
Yeah.
lot like the Undefeated, the first one, the bullfighting story. So I guess that would be the it was, don't get me wrong, it was still good, but yeah, it did go on for maybe a little too long. It
Yeah.
was it was the
It didn't
longest
feel
one,
like fresh or revelatory.
right? Because it was we've seen it before. It's in
Hmm.
modern media, but it was so similar to the Undefeated. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I think upon multiple reads, I really like La Patria one.
yeah,
That one is just witty and funny.
it
Really
really
like
is. Yeah,
this one. Uh, I mean, some of these stories, for various multiple reasons, are riddled with things I don't like,
sure.
like all the racism and the misogyny and um there was a great joke about misogyny in the in the fascist one.
Right. My friend's a
The
misogynist.
Patriot, yeah.
Yeah,
And so for me, I try to take them for what they are from the time that they are and realize like stories can be written without this and still have
sure. Yeah,
the things that are in them. And I do love the dialogue in some of them. For 50 grand, again, I've read that one like 3 times and I'm still, it was really tough,
yeah,
the back and forth. But I think less as a read aloud, as a story that you read to yourself and you just enter that world, it's one thing. So I think I need to separate those things. But that might be my least favorite from this one, from this group. I think the other ones just
yeah.
offer, like I said, something just
Something new. Yeah,
yeah, feels new, feels fresh, even as like as a person who loves short stories. And it's 1927 they're written in, and I still feel that way about them.
Yeah. No, yeah, definitely. They're, I think, for a modern audience, casual racism aside, the message that they have still resonates and is worth reading,
Yeah, and
which
the
is why we're reading
craft.
these.
Yeah,
Oh
just
my goodness, yeah.
yeah.
He is a good
And
writer. Yeah, definitely.
and people, Hemingway ha has been and is and was lifted up to like he is the modern American writer for much of his time. Then he fell quite far, I think, in academia. Like people say his name, like stories like Hemingway, like he's the
Oh,
white hegemonic cis,
yeah.
he is what literature and the study of literature has been. He's been the
Right.
canon.
Right. Yeah.
And so we want to push that away. We don't want to be a part of that. And I get that because that makes room for other people and other voices that didn't get there. And I think that's really important. But you can't deny the craft. You can't
Right.
deny that this is worth reading and it's good and it got elevated for a reason. Now,
Right.
other people didn't get elevated
Sure.
for reasons that were terrible and they
Right.
should have been. But I feel like he really, I mean, I've always loved Hemingway. So classic for a reason. Again, we say that a
Yeah.
lot on here.
We do. Yeah, definitely. It's kind of the name of the podcast. All right. So that brings us to the end of the section this time. For next time, we are going to finish this short story collection, and there's more stories. We have 6 to get through, but
Hmm.
they're shorter, so it's actually going to be a quicker, shorter read next time. So if you're reading along with us at home, go ahead and finish the next 6 stories for next time, and we will talk about them next time. So if you like what we're doing here, folks, you know, you know how it works, right? You like and subscribe. We have our YouTube channel. You can see all these wonderful discussion videos as well as we put up all of the reading. You can also subscribe on any major podcast platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio Podcasts, you name it. The podcast is available. CYST Pod. You can also follow us on all of our social media accounts. We are CYST Pod on Instagram and Facebook. We are also now on Blue Sky. So you look for us at cystpod.blue sky social, whatever the whole.
What is it that we do on
It's
Blue
in the.
Sky?
It's in the. It's Blue
What do we,
Sky's
what
the
do we do?
new. It's well, it's not. It's
What is it?
the Twitter replacement. It's Twitter. It's a Twitter
Oh,
replacement. It's made by a bunch of Twitter folks that left when Musk bought Twitter.
so what do you call it? You don't call it a tweet.
They call them skeets. So yeah, that's
I feel like that
yeah.
has another meaning
It
that
does.
isn't.
It does. Yes.
I'm not gonna skeet. I'm gonna skeet about our
The
episode.
the company officially calls them posts, but the community
Fine.
does call them skeets.
So
So
they're like
anyway,
skeevy tweets, secondary
no, like
tweets.
sky, because it's like if you write blue
Oh,
sky, it looks like blue ski, like your check or something, and so they call them skeets.
couldn't
I
they
don't
just
know.
call them blue skis?
I guess they
Skis?
could, but that's multiple syllables.
I said a new ski.
At any rate, we are on there, and Blue Sky is open to the public now. You don't need an invite code. You can just sign up. And so if you're sick of Twitter, X, whatever, you can head on over to Blue Sky, get yourself an account there, and follow us on Blue Sky. You can also send us an email, cystpod@gmail.com. All right. Oh, make sure also, if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, head on over. We haven't gotten a review in a while, folks.
Well,
So if you're enjoying the podcast, kindly head over to Apple Podcasts, drop us a review, and let us know how you're doing. You can also comment on our YouTube videos, send us an email, however, get in touch with us. We like to
we'd
hear how
like you
you guys are
not to
enjoying these
mention the
books.
frequency or lack thereof. Like that's not really part of it, right?
We
That's
still
not
like to
part
hear
of
from
it.
you folks. We do this for you guys, so you get these wonderful books delivered to you in podcast form. Take an audiobook with you wherever you go. All right.
You know, I do it because when I pull up YouTube for my son, because he likes ASMR, he sees my videos and he thinks I'm a famous YouTuber.
There you go.
He
That's the
does.
reason to do it.
He's like, "Oh
Perfect.
my God, it's you." Like,
You're
it
on
is
the
me.
internet.
He
It's
doesn't know how it
amazing.
works.
It's so easy. So easy to be on the internet nowadays, folks. All right, so until next time, this has been Classics You Slept Through. It is almost time for spring break, folks, so I would recommend getting your vaccinations before you travel anywhere.
Grab your beach reads. Peace.